Hi, thank you very much for having me and asking me to do this. My name is Lisa Muller, and my son is Riley. He has MPS type 2. He is 7 years old, and in addition to Riley, we have a 10-year-old son named Donovan, and my husband Rob. So here's some pictures of our family. Just a little bit of background about me is I do have a master's degree in special education. I've been teaching in the special ed field for 13 years, specifically in a special needs preschool program for the last 9 years. And I'm kind of the general interpreter for all things meeting and evaluation involved with my family. I go to the meetings, and then I go home and I tell my husband what they said. So just kind of, that's kind of my role. Let's see. How our IEP journey began. When Riley was 18 months old, he was diagnosed with a speech delay. And at that point, we got involved with early intervention services. His first IEP was not until age 3, or a little bit before age 3, when he was transitioning to the preschool services from early intervention. And again, his first IEP was still prior to his MPS II diagnosis. So at that point, we were just dealing with speech only and some classroom type behaviors. When I sat down at the table for our first IEP meeting, even though I had been teaching and had been on the other side of the table at that point, I was terrified. I mean, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what they're going to tell you about how he's doing, what's going to be involved, if they're going to listen to you. We've been very, very fortunate with both the county program who provided the preschool services and our school district. We've been extremely fortunate with how willing they have been to listen to me and my concerns, and looking at the big picture with Riley and addressing all the things that we have asked them to address. But you know, sitting at that table and having like 10 other people around me was a little daunting. Since that time, since his first IEP, we've had 5 other IEPs. Just most recently in May, we had he's going into the first grade. So we had our most recent IEP to talk about what first grade was going to look like for him. And there were some changes. You know, we looked at how kindergarten went and how he was served. And I kind of brought my information to the table, and like I said, we've been fortunate that they have been listening to us and listening to what would be best for Riley. So just kind of in general, what's important to me when I go into these IEP meetings, communication is the most important thing when it comes to these meetings. And I expect, and I've told them what my expectations are as well, I expect them to let me know when things are different than they have been before. I expect them to let me know if he's struggling or if he's having a good day and what worked. In addition, on the flip side of that is I would have them expect me to share with them any information that we've learned about Riley. So we have recently gone to see a neurocognitive team who did a comprehensive evaluation on Riley, and part of their service is providing educational suggestions. And so then I took that information, brought it back to the school, and said, here's what they said, and this is where he is right now, and this is how he's doing, and here's some suggestions that they have, these people who completely understand MPS and how it's affecting Riley, and this is what they think will work for him in the classroom. And they were very receptive to that, and kind of incorporated some of those pieces of information into his IEP. Before he did transition from preschool, and his preschool was a special ed community. You know, it was they learned MPS with us. He was diagnosed when he was 3.5, his first year of preschool, and so they learned the whole process with us. They were learning as I was learning, but transitioning from preschool to school age was again another scary step for me, because here he was going from the special ed environment to a regular ed environment, or regular school, who sometimes, you know, it's sometimes aren't as accommodating as they could or should be. So what I did was I created an in-service for the staff at the elementary school, and I laid out exactly what MPS was, how it affected Riley, what it meant in terms of Riley, the fact that it was progressive, and that how things are today may not be how they are tomorrow, and that we had to keep on top of it, keep on top of where he was. So I invited all the teachers and all the specialists that would be working with him, as well as anybody else in the school that wanted to come. And I just laid it all out there. I educated them on what MPS was. In addition to those types of things, I email his teacher almost daily. I could say weekly, but it's more daily. His regular teacher, his special ed teacher, I keep in touch through email a lot. And phone calls if needed. I speak with the school nurse quite frequently. Anytime they do any kind of evaluation, I expect them to give me a call and let me know what's going on. Another important thing for me is making sure that all the key players are at the meeting. Because if I have a question about his speech therapy goal, or if I have a question about his occupational therapy goal, I want to be able to ask that person who's going to be providing the service. So that is an important part, is to make sure when we have the meeting that all players are there. Because I know my experience as a special ed teacher, sometimes it is hard to get all the people there. So sometimes it is just myself as the special ed teacher, the district representative, a general ed teacher, and maybe one of the therapists, but not the other. So I know for planning purposes, it's difficult, but I try to make sure that everybody is there so I can ask the questions that I might need to ask. Another thing that's really important to me when we do have our IEP meetings is if they're giving a suggestion on how to work with Riley, or if I'm suggesting something, I expect that there's follow through with that. I mean, I expect that I can call in 2 weeks and say, all right, remember when we talked about this? How's it going? What are you seeing? Are you seeing any changes? For example, one of the suggestions from the neurocognitive team was that Riley start using an FM system. So he would wear headphones, the teacher would wear a microphone, and it would block out kind of the extra noises, and he could really focus on what she was saying. So after they'd started that, I called him and I said, hey, how's it going? How is this FM system working? And she was able to tell me, if it had a positive or negative impact, or no impact at all. Let's see. These here are just some helpful tips that I have found as both a teacher and a parent. Asking for an IEP or copy of the IEP prior to the meeting is really, really helpful, because it gives you a chance to focus on what it actually says versus going there and trying to read it while they're trying to explain, while they're trying to talk to you. So this gives you a chance to really know what the content is, and also to guide your questions if you have questions about what they're doing, or how he had progressed on the prior IEP. The other important thing, or helpful tip for me, is that remembering that it's only a draft. Until you sign it, it's really just a draft copy. You have to approve it, you have to agree with it, you have to agree that it's something that you want to do. So going in there knowing that your input, you are a part of the team, that's really important to remember, is that you know your child better than anybody else, and you know what works with them and what does not. So remembering that you are a part of that team, you are providing that input. If something doesn't make sense, and again, that goes back to wanting to have all the key players there, ask questions, ask for clarification on what they're talking about, ask what it's going to look like, what does that goal, how is that going to look in the classroom? So knowing exactly when they're reading these goals and objectives to you, what that means. And again, if you're not comfortable with what it's saying, or you're not understanding what it's saying, you can ask to maybe schedule another meeting to review it again, or go home and talk it over with your spouse or with a trusted friend, or somebody, if you wanted to bring somebody but they weren't able to come, talk that over with them, to just make sure that you're asking, or make sure that you're comfortable with what you're signing, that this is the plan in place for your child for the next year. And going along with requesting a draft copy it's helpful for me anyway to write down questions and any concerns before I go to the meeting, and that way I know, because a lot of times if I don't write something down, it's gone. So if I don't remember to write it down, I don't remember to bring it up. So if you have that list of questions and you know what you want to be asking, or concerns that you want specifically addressed in the IEP. The other thing is knowing all of the people that are at the meeting, and then what their job is in regards to your child. So if there's somebody there that you don't know, or you've not met before, or you just don't, you hadn't met your therapist before. Sometimes, for Riley specifically, he has an occupational therapist who writes the goals and objectives, but he has an OT assistant who actually implements the goals. So I actually like to make sure that they're both there, so I need to know that they're both on the same page as far as what they're doing with Riley. And then this is a huge part here. Part of our job as parents is to educate the people who are working with our children, and it's something that we're going to have to continually do. We, like I said before, we know our children the best. We are their best advocate. So it's our job to make sure they understand exactly what MPS is and how it affects our kids, because a lot of people don't. And I find myself repeating the same things over and over and over again, but they need to understand where it is that Riley is coming from. And just because today he can do something doesn't mean that tomorrow he's going to be able to. So I'd like to make sure that they fully understand. That we had he was being seen consultatively, so once a month by the physical therapist, and started having some additional back pain, and we went and saw an orthopedic doctor, and he's like, this, it's because his hamstrings are really tight. So I went back and I talked to the PT, and I said, this is what's going on. This is why he's having back pain. And so she's like, all right. When she started seeing him on a weekly basis to implement a stretching program for him there. And even though, she may not have thought that back pain affects his school performance, it's the fact that it eventually could. If it's untreated, if it's left, if we don't worry about it at this point, it could eventually. That can affect him getting up and down off the floor, in and out of his seat, reaching into his cubby to get his book bag. Those are all things that are school-related that could stem from ignoring the back pain. This is Riley at his kindergarten graduation. They had a little tropical celebration, so he was pretty cute. So it kind of, in general, I know not everybody has good experiences with IEPs. I know that that's, we've been very fortunate, and I understand that we're very fortunate because, like I said, I do see from both sides of the table as a special ed teacher, telling parents, how we're going to be working with their child, and as a parent asking for certain things. But I found this funny little cartoon. I thought it was really funny there that the parent on the left side is before the IEP and then after the IEP. So I feel that this kind of really sums it up for everybody, because no matter how prepared you are before you go in there, it's like exhaustion after you're done. So that's pretty much our experience.